Another interesting thing that I just love, because you're gonna love this too, and you're gonna start to like be super fucking weird like me and notice it everywhere you go, like at restaurants with your family or wherever, and you'll see people on dates and literally, like, not that it's necessary that you do this, but you will be able to see if they are enjoying the date or not. And that is if they're the body never lies. You will hear me say this over and over again in terms of healing work that we do internally, somatically, but then also in the realm of body language. It's because body language actually comes from the subconscious mind. It comes from the part of us that is below our conscious mind. It's like below the surface. It's beneath the tip of the iceberg. The conscious mind, which is the part of you where you are aware of your thoughts, you think you're in control, you think you can manage everything, that's about 5% of you. And then below that 5% of you, there is this whole ocean, this whole plethora of who you are that is having nervous system bodily reactions to everything around you that you cognitively may or may not know about. Sometimes we know about them, sometimes we don't. And that's because there's this filtration system of kind of like what in the body is allowed to get up into the mind and then vice versa. So when you're reading body language, and in a dating sense in particular, you're only ever looking for 2 different types of body language. That's it. And why is there only 2 different types of body language? Because there's only 2 different states of the nervous system. There's 2 main states of the universe at large. There is expansion. Okay, this is like rest and digest. This is relaxation. This is like the example that I love to give is like if you imagine that you're sitting at this beautiful beach and you know that feeling where you can just see everything all at once. Like you can see the waves and at the same time you can see the people walking by. You can also smell. You can also see your feet in the sand. Your visual cortex is open because you are relaxed. You can see everything. Your nervous system is regulated. Now, if you were to imagine, this would never happen, that a tiger were to jump out of that scene, at that beach, and the tiger jumps at you, there is no fucking possible way that you would be able to stay in that open rest and digest state. You would enter a state of constriction immediately, and every part of you would constrict. Your thoughts would constrict, your sense of self would constrict, your visual cortex would constrict. You would basically be worried about one thing, and that is survival, by means of running away from something that you don't want. You don't want that tiger. Why? Because you really, really want to live. So understanding the 2 states of the nervous system, having that visual, helps us to understand our own body language and helps us to interpret our date's body language. Because knowing that there are only 2 states of the nervous system, it means that there can only be 2 types of body language. There can be a body language that exhibits that openness, that trust, that expansion, maybe that turn on, maybe your date is feeling it, they're opening, they're wanting to be closer to you, they're tapping into that sexual energy or that turn on energy or maybe that heart-centered energy or a curiosity. All of these are the yummy emotions that is essentially marked by they're looking at the whole big picture and they're enjoying it. And the other type of body language that you will notice in a dating setting is constrictive. That is the tiger. Now, obviously, there's not going to be tigers at your date, but our bodies are hardwired to respond to all types of threats, sense of self types of threats, physical threats, emotional threats, mental threats, spiritual threats, all in the same way, and that is to react in some capacity as if there is a tiger. Now, the other interesting thing, especially in a dating setting, is that they're not always going to be reacting to you. You have to remember that each individual has this like web of experiences, this web of how they filter information, triggers, a past, generational shit that they don't even know about. So there's this whole host of information, and that information creates like a web around their 5 senses, a web around what they're hearing, a web around what they're seeing, what they're feeling, what they're smelling, what they're sensing. And so when your energy comes through that filtration system, when it comes through that web, it can be interpreted in different ways inside of that person. And it doesn't mean that you are wrong or bad. It doesn't mean that you are doing something wrong or bad. In fact, it's completely neutral. There's no meaning on it. The only thing we can really determine from body language is that that person just entered a state of nervous system relaxation or nervous system stress. And so sometimes what happens in a dating setting is that there might be something that's being talked about that's totally casual, but it goes through their web and it triggers a thought. And they're reacting to the thought in their head that you will probably never know what that is. Even in intimate relationships, like, you're not gonna know every single thought that that person has and every iteration of their experience of reality. But the thought can also be a tiger. The thought can also cause nervous system dysregulation because it creates an emotional sense in the body. So what you're seeing is those emotional shifts in the body. Now, with that said, there are some different body language things, behaviors that you can look for that do generally have a very particular meaning. But just so that we can all be on the same page about the science behind it, there's not usually a behavior that correlates to always one thing. You really have to know the person. You have to know their idiosyncratic behaviors, meaning some people just naturally blink a lot, right? And blinking, increased blink rate, would be a sign of stress. But if that person naturally just blinks a lot, I'm all of a sudden aware of my blinking. Every time I talk about body language, this is very tangential, but every time I talk about body language, I always become very aware of my own body language. It's almost impossible not to. But with that said, blinking a lot or fast is a sign of stress. But if you have somebody that naturally blinks a lot, you can't deduce from that that person is stressed out. You have to use body language in context as to what is happening in that circumstance, what is being spoken about, what is happening in your surroundings. You're not looking at isolated traits, you're looking at the story arc. You're looking at, especially in a dating scenario, where is that person's feet over time? Where is that person's phone on the table over time? Where is that person's arms placed over time? Are they touching their face more or less? Is their smile more genuine or not genuine? I'm going to teach you all of these things. I just wanted to get through the basics so that I'm not giving you misinformation about body language, because it's just fucking not true when somebody tells you that this certain behavior means that someone's lying. Oh, if someone looks up and to the left that they're lying, that's all fucking completely bullshit, and don't listen to any of that. When you're using reading body language on a date, I think this also has to be said, even though I do think it's kind of obvious. Don't be hyper obsessed with watching someone's body language. There's a lot of different ways to use it, and you'll know in your heart how it fits into your life. I personally used to have a fuck ton of social anxiety. I would sit in conversations and sweat because I was so anxious about feeling stupid and feeling like I had nothing to say, that I would be so in my head because I was trying to avoid the feelings in my body, and I would just spiral in that. And so for me personally, because that's where I started, learning body language, learning face reading, which I'll link some videos above because I do have a ton of information on that as well, and a ton on TikTok. I have a lot of face reading stuff on TikTok, so go check me out there. But learning these things was a way for me, it was a tool for me to get out of my head, to get my presence and my focus actually outside of me and in my surroundings. And I ended up learning it in this way where humans became fascinating to me. There's nothing I love more than humans and human behavior. It's this interesting story because there's such divine perfection in the imperfection of every single human. I don't even watch movies because I could just go sit and watch people in their story arc and in their micro expressions and in their body language. It's this beautiful story that I've never read, and I want to read all of them. So that might be you. You might be able to find body language useful and learning about body language useful in that way. You also might be I get a lot of people that are a nice guy. They're not sure. They've been burned by women who are treated them some sort of certain way that wasn't so good. And it's useful for them to just have this information in the back of their head. Oh, hey, she is orientating towards me. These are signs that I am seeing that I can logically confirm that she could potentially be attracted to me. And it just helps give that little bit of extra confidence and like knowing, so that he's not like looping in his head. Anyways, there's a plethora of different ways you can use this, but with that said, because that was a very long introduction, let's get started with the positive body language movements that you might see on a date. The main thing you're going to see over the arc of a date, if someone is really, really enjoying it, is that their ventral orientation, meaning the midline of their body, is going to face you over time. It's not going to be like this, clear arc of constantly just facing you more and more. Obviously, we have discomforts and we shift and we this and we go in and out of states all the time. But the overall arc, that person will get closer to you, or they will lean in closer than they have before. Then maybe they'll lean back and then they'll lean back in. Their spine, and especially like their feet, if you can see their feet, obviously sometimes they're under a table. Please don't just look under the table. But these things will start to point you. And that's because body language is always a reflection of like real-time information that is happening within the body, because the sensation in the body is, I really want to be closer to this person. I'm really enjoying this. I want to lean and I want to be closer, but it's socially inappropriate to just get really close to that person and like smell them, right? Which like smell is such a huge thing with attraction, but the body language is going to over time get closer. So you're going to see things like leaning in, tilting the head. And this is a big one, especially for women. When a woman tilts the head, this is very, very flirty. This is very flirtatious. It's very like playful. Sidebar, women exist in a state of fear all the time, whether they realize it or not. So when a woman enters a state of asymmetry, tilt their head, or any kind of asymmetry in their body, and it's playful, they have this genuine smile, it's a really good sign, because you can't be in play and stress at the same time. And you should write that down, because if you want to rewire anything inside of your body, I'll link another video on how to do that. Play, literally. I'll link the video for the 4 steps of feeling fucking anything. In step number 3, you need to play. Okay, write that down. If you're playing, you're not in stress. If you're in stress, you're not playing. It's animal biology. So if a woman is playing, even if a man is playing, right? If someone is playing, if they're asymmetry, if they're having fun, they're not in a state of stress. They're feeling it. They're enjoying it. Now, another interesting thing that I just love, because you're going to love this too, and you're going to start to like be super fucking weird like me and notice it everywhere you go, like at restaurants with your family or wherever, and you'll see people on dates, and you literally, like, not that it's necessary that you do this, but you will be able to see if they are enjoying the date or not. And that is if their water glasses get closer to each other over time. It sounds like super ridiculous, but when you see over time 2 people on a date and their water glasses get closer to each other, it's a sign that they're actually both experiencing their rapport. If you even think about like the water glass, something that you bring to your lips, you're bringing it up. It's a little bit of an intimate experience because it's in your mouth, and you're putting that thing closer to each other over time. It's a sign of that like really genuine rapport building. And it's along those same lines in terms of like objects on the table. You're going to see 2 things in terms of positive body language, like someone that's an enjoyment, in terms of the object on the table. You're either going to see, and this one's hilarious to watch, you're either going to see people remove objects. So it's so subtle, like when somebody opens up something like even just a little bit more vulnerable on a date, but they feel a little bit safe to do so, depending on how safe they feel, they will take like a plate, or they'll take their phone, or they'll take their sunglasses, and they'll just move it slightly out of the way between you and them. Again, this subconscious part of us, this animal part of us that's trying to get closer to the other person, but it has no outlet for it, so it's coming through the body. So you'll see people move stuff out of the way. Now, again, we'll talk about it in the negative sense, but obviously there is that negative sense in negative body language. If somebody's feeling uncomfortable, it has nothing to do with you, at least most of the time, you'll see them take that plate or take that fork or take that, whatever, and they'll put it right in front of them, and they will hold it in front of their heart. So this is more of like a guarding behavior. Again, it does not mean that you're bad or wrong, but in a dating scenario, especially like a first date, just change the conversation. soften, lean back, give them space, right? Just something really subtle just to communicate like, hey, I see you. I know that you are having this little discomfort. Don't say that verbally because that'll be fucking weird. And we do a lot of this instinctually, so it's not like you have to remember everything I'm saying. It's more of like a fun exploration to all this body language stuff. Body language things you will see on a date. The exposure of the physically vulnerable parts of the body is such a huge one. Okay, so the physically vulnerable parts of the body are the places where tigers, all comes down to tigers, could actually kill you. They could attack you. So they're going to go for the jugular. They're going to go for the neck. They're going to go for the wrist. Like these are all of like the very physically vulnerable parts of the body. And when somebody if you're watching, or if you're listening to this on a podcast, you can't see me. So I'll try to explain it. But if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see me, obviously. So if someone does like this, right? So a lot of times people say like, oh, well, playing with your hair is like a nervous behavior. But there's a difference. In the positive sense, when somebody is playing with their hair, see how this looks like different? And I'm over exaggerating it, but my wrist is exposed. I'm tucking my hair behind my ear. I might be like exposing my neck. I'm tilting my head. I have a genuine smile, but there's light in my eyes and I'm leaning in. So there's all of these different cues that are leading up to like, I'm enjoying myself right now. And you best be sure I am very fucking much enjoying myself right now, because it works both ways. You can do this and feel good sensations in the body, and you can also have it be reversed where you feel good sensations and your body kind of reacts. We have both kinds of like top down and bottom up processing. Anyways, so if I'm doing this is a good sign. My wrist is exposed. Even if I'm like touching my neck, but it's in an open way and there's that head tilt. Sometimes with men, I will see sometimes they do lean back, which is usually not a positive body language sign, but I'm gonna show you what they do. They lean back and do this. So you can see like when I lean back, my wrist was out. It's different if the wrist is down and then there's some sort of like blocking behavior with the other hand. Men oftentimes, when they're feeling confident, will lean back and take up more space. Okay. Women do it too, but there are some different gender generalities that happen. But don't take the gender generalities. That's hard to say. Take that with a grain of salt. Now, the last very positive body language sign that you can look for is something called mirroring. Now, if you've studied NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, or seduction, or anything like that, you can reverse engineer this as some sort of manipulation tactic to actually mirror people to build rapport. And yes, totally works delusionally well. So I'll just throw that one out there. But it's a natural process that humans, mammals, do in social settings when they're feeling rapport. It's almost like they copy your body language a moment after you do it. And it's funny to see because, when I'm feeling rapport on a date, I will notice that this just happens naturally. I try not to think too much about it because then I get in my own way. But I will actually notice if he crosses his leg, all of a sudden I'm crossing my legs. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm feeling it. And vice versa. Like all of a sudden, if I move my water glass, he'll move his water glass. And I'm not doing these things strategically. However, I will tell you this, that when I first learned this, I did do this strategically to test it out, and it fucking works. And even just to test it out, like I would move my body and see if he or whoever I was with would move their body just to see like, well, what's the level of rapport that we even have right now? So it's always a very accurate reflection of the level of rapport, connection, intimacy that is developing between two people, romantically on a date, or just otherwise, even in sales. Okay, let's get into the body language that is negative. There are some main body language things that you can look for that are a very much of a sign of stress for that person. We don't know why, right? You can try to pay attention to the context. You're not going to maybe always know exactly why they just experienced stress, but you can be sure that that person just experienced a hit of stress. I find in my dating life and also in my work and working with just thousands of people in their subconscious shadows, meaning the things that are, discombobulated inside of them, which we all have that, people's body language gets really stressed out looking when they are getting closer to repressed parts of themselves. And so even in a dating sense, I noticed that where when people feel like they're exposing a repressed part of themselves, when they're touching on, when they're shining even a little bit of light on a repressed part of themselves, their body language kind of goes a little wackadoodle. It doesn't look like it from the outside, but if you know what to look for, you'll start to notice it. And anyways, one of the main things that they'll do is they'll touch their jugular. I would say that this is like the main sign of stress. And in a woman, if they're wearing jewelry, they will play with their jewelry. Huge stress sign. Sometimes it's not, you got to use common sense. Sometimes it's not an indication to change the subject. Sometimes it's like they're telling a vulnerable story and it's like a first or a second date. And it's actually just uncomfortable, right? It's not that they don't want to be, but if you notice that, you can just know like, wow, this is really special. Like this is really special that this person feels at least cognitively safe enough to share this with me. And that would be an indication for you to like soften. Just soften into it. Listen, don't interrupt. People like, do you see how frustrating I am? People always want to talk about themselves, which is fine. Everyone wants to do it. But if you notice somebody and they're having this stressful jugular reaction or playing with their jewelry, or a man might adjust his collar, or a man will just actually just touch his neck usually. Just let them do their thing, give them space. If you notice it and you're talking about something, just back off a little in a dating sense. Like, you don't have to push that concept. Maybe revisit it later if it forms into a relationship. But the jugular is a really big one. The neck's a really big one. And then any kind of face touching, ear pulling. I see that sometimes. Nose touching, right? Like nose touching is a big one. Face touching is a big one. These are all stress signs. And then in particular, when somebody touches their lips or when somebody covers their lips, people can use a hand, they can use an object to cover their lips. They can put something up against their lips. I mean, some women put their jewelry in their mouth. That's like stress off the charts. When somebody even takes their lips and bites the bottom, and this isn't like a preening, I want you to kiss me. That's a little bit different. That's like they're gonna lick their lips and their body language is gonna be very soft and they're gonna be a little bit close into your bubble. That would be all good stuff. This is like, you kind of see them leave their eyes, like their eyes become a little bit vacant. It's a very subtle thing that's hard to explain. But you'll start to notice it now that it's in your wheelhouse. But you'll see them leave their eyes and you'll see them kind of like bite their lip, or they'll purse their lips together, they'll curl their lips under. And even in face reading, again, I'll link a face reading video. People that have very thin lips, and especially when that upper lip is curled under, those people have a lot of emotional difficulty expressing truth. They're constantly holding back what they want to say. And it's because of this body language, kind of like a micro expression that happens over time of curling their lips under to withhold opinions and withhold speech. So when you see somebody block their mouth or curl their lips under or like purse their lips together, that is almost always withheld speech. That person has something to say, an opinion, a thought, an objection, a personal truth, something that they want to get out, but they're withholding their speech. So it's just, it's good to be aware of, and you can use that in context of like, you can be like, oh, well, what do you think about that, right? Like you can open up the space, you can give them that opportunity to maybe speak what they want to speak, or, if it's something else, you can change the subject. Again, you got to use it in context. The next real negative thing to look for is any type of repetitive behavior. So this would be considered self-soothing. So like what I'm doing right now, I'm rubbing my arm, I'm making it very obvious. People are not going to make it that obvious or this sensual. But, somebody that's doing something repetitive in terms of like hair playing, something like this where they're repetitively touching their hair, that's a stress sign. That's different than this is preening. That's a good sign. That's like, ooh, I want to look cute for you. You're going to subconsciously like pick lint off your shirt, adjust your shirt, adjust your collar, adjust your hair. That's all good signs. But anything that's repetitive is self-soothing. You'll see it to people's fingers. They do this a lot, like under the table or on the table. They'll start self-soothing. Sometimes it's someone's normal state again. Sometimes I know a lot of people that just do that all the time. And that's the normal state. So you got to use it with, again, that person's baseline behavior. And then the last one, which we did kind of talk about in the positive sense, is like blocking. So blocking could be with a limb, right? So it could be taking your limb, putting it over your body, putting it across your body, blocking anything of the midline. Anytime you're blocking the midline of the body, it's self-preservation. It's like, oh, hey, something subconscious just happened. And the subconscious animal body goes, I need to go into protection. So it starts protecting itself. You'll see it a lot with hands. Again, you might see it with like a plate, with a water glass, with a phone. They will bring something, they will place it squarely directly in the midline of their body. They'll usually hold on to it. And sometimes their feet might even curl under, or they might hold onto the chair, or their feet will shift away. So you'll see a lot of these things in conjunction with a bunch of other body language stuff. But anyways, that was like way longer than I expected. I hope that was enjoyable and fun. I love talking about body language. So I very much appreciate you listening. Let me know in the comments if you found that useful, interesting, what you think. Tell me how your next date goes. I would love to hear about it, and any other specific questions you have so I can make more content like this for you. Now, if you are interested in learning everything about face reading and body language, I do have a face reading and body language entire course where you can get all the details. So I'll put that in the link in the description, and I hope you have a beautiful day.